Before we begin, imagine this: a silent hall lit only by flickering lanterns. Wealthy men standing shoulder to shoulder, and on a wooden platform in the center, a woman whose very presence freezes the entire room, not because she is frightened, not because she is helpless, but because everyone in that room senses something about her, something powerful, something rare, something dangerous tonight. We reveal the untold mystery of the woman the secret markets of Charleston once whispered about. The most desired woman ever sold. If you want more hidden histories like this, make sure you hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because each episode reveals a truth that history tried to bury. Now, let's step into Charleston, 1823. The auction trade men, the city of Charleston, looked peaceful on the surface. Carriages rolled along the cobblestone roads. Shopkeepers swept their doorsteps, and the smell of baked bread drifted from open windows. But beneath that polished exterior existed a network of hidden marketplaces where transactions weren't written into any official ledger, and where the wealthiest men purchased what money was never meant to buy. These auctions happened long after midnight, in old warehouses along the waterfront, guarded by men whose only loyalty was to gold, and for weeks, these circles buzzed with rumors of an upcoming sale. A woman said to be like no other. Some whispered she was breathtakingly beautiful. Others said she could speak multiple languages. A few swore she had the kind of intelligence and presence that made even the most powerful men uneasy. But no description prepared them for what they saw the night she was brought out. The lanterns dimmed as she stepped into the center of the room. Not a tremble, not a tear. Her back straight, her chin lifted, and her eyes calm. Unbroken moved slowly over each man, as if she were the one evaluating them. The traders gave no name, no origin, no history. Only a single line was written in the silent ledger: property of the estate. Condition: exceptional. Value: undetermined. The room murmured, though no one dared voice what they felt. It was not desire, though she was beautiful. It was not fascination, though she was mysterious. It was something deeper. A presence that unsettled them. A quiet strength that didn't belong in a place built on fear. Even the seasoned auctioneer hesitated. He cleared his throat twice before speaking. "Gentlemen, we begin the bidding." But for a moment, no one raised a hand. That stillness, that hesitation, was more powerful than any shout. Then, breaking through the silence, a voice called out from the back, 4,000. Heads snapped toward the bidder, a wealthy plantation magnate named Silas Breedwell. His reputation for ruthlessness made others reconsider challenging him. But tonight, greed was stronger than fear. 5,000, 6, 7. The numbers climbed like flames. In the center of the room, the woman didn't flinch. Not when men yelled over each other. Not when the price soared high enough to make even the boldest bidder sweat. She simply clasped her hands in front of her and watched. It was as if she knew. This was all part of a path she had chosen long before she stepped onto that platform. The bidding ended with a final, echoing shout. $10,000. Silas Breedwell. The hall fell silent. The gavel slammed. The deal was done. But no one, not the traders, not Silas, not the guards escorting her out, understood what they had truly purchased. She was not a victim to rescue. She was not a commodity to own. She was a storm wrapped in elegance, and her arrival in Charleston was not an accident. It was a warning. If you're ready to uncover the truth behind her identity, her plan, and the secret she carried into the heart of Charleston, make sure you give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and stay tuned for Where the Mystery Deepens. They brought her to the Breedwell estate just before dawn. The sky was still dark, the horizon tinted only with the softest hint of blue. The guards guiding her said nothing, and she didn't ask. She walked calmly, gracefully, as if she were a guest being escorted into a grand home rather than a purchase being delivered. Silas Breedwell stood on the wide veranda, arms crossed, watching her approach with an expression that hovered uneasily between triumph and suspicion. He had won her, Yet something deep inside him whispered that the victory might cost more than he imagined. "Welcome to Breedwell Manor," he said finally. The woman met his gaze without blinking. Her expression remained unreadable, not defiant, not submissive, but something in between. Something steady. Something dangerous. "You will be given quarters in the East Wing," Silas continued. "You'll serve inside the house, and you will answer when called." Her voice, when she finally spoke, was soft, smooth, and startlingly composed. "I understand, sir." He expected fear. He expected trembling hands, lowered eyes, whispered answers. He got none of that, and that made Silas Breedwell uneasy. Within hours. The servants had already begun whispering about her. Who was she? Where did she come from? Why had the traders refused to give her name? The housemaid Polly was the first to speak to her directly. "You got a name, miss?" Polly asked timidly as she delivered fresh linens to the small room in the East Wing. The woman paused, considering. Then she answered, "Camellia." A name given not with reluctance but with intention. A name that fit her, elegant, composed, and quietly resilient. Polly smiled. "That's a pretty name," Camellia nodded politely. But inside she felt the weight of the lie. It wasn't her birth name. It wasn't the one her mother whispered over her as a child. But it was a name she chose, because her real one could not be spoken here. Not yet. Days passed. Camelia's presence in the manor became impossible to ignore. She moved with a stillness that felt deliberate, as if every step was measured. She observed everything: Silas's business meetings, the comings and goings of staff, the polished silver trays that held letters he never let anyone else handle. Even the guests noticed her. "Where did you find this one, Breedwell?" A quiet one. Too quiet. There's something in her eyes. Almost like she's thinking. Silas dismissed their comments with a forced laugh, but they bothered him because he saw it too. Camellia was not like the others. She was not broken by circumstance. She was not shaped by fear. Something about her felt intentional, as if she wasn't here by force, as if she was here with purpose. Late one evening, Silas entered his study and noticed something was off. A quill moved from its usual place. A candle burned lower than he remembered, and on his desk a small, conspicuous details, an ink smudge on the corner of his ledger. Camelia's room was only 2 doors down. He tightened his jaw. When he saw her the next morning, arranging a vase of fresh flowers, he confronted her. "Were you in my study last night?" "No, sir," she replied calmly, not glancing up from her work. Silas stepped closer, searching her expression for even the slightest hint of deception. There was none. And yet, something about the way she held herself, the way she didn't fidget, didn't look away, made him feel as if she were hiding a truth he wasn't smart enough to find. "You stay out of that room," he warned. Camellia set the last flower in place. Then she finally met his eyes. "You can lock your doors, sir," she murmured. But doors don't keep out everything. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't an insult. It was simply a statement. And that frightened him more than an outright challenge. What Silas didn't know, what no one in the Breedwell estate knew, was that Camellia was studying the house. Every hallway, every locked drawer, every whispered conversation. She remembered the names scribbled in notebooks. She memorized the routes of the guards at night. She followed the sound of carriage wheels to determine when guests arrived, when they left. And most importantly, she watched Silas, because the man who owned the most powerful connections in Charleston was the same man who unknowingly held the key to the secret she had carried since childhood. Camellia hadn't been brought to Charleston to be owned. Her journey had not ended when the gavel struck. In truth, it had only just begun. Charleston was a city that kept its secrets well. Behind the grandeur of its white-pillared homes and fragrant magnolia trees, it hid a network of whispered stories, quiet rebellions, unspoken betrayals, and lives that moved in the shadows more freely than those who walked the streets in daylight. Camellia knew this better than anyone. She had lived her entire life beneath the surface of things, learning to read the truth behind a man's eyes. Memorizing conversations not meant for her, decoding the meaning behind half-spoken sentences. She understood silence just as well as sound. And Charleston. Charleston was a city that spoke loudly in its silences, asterisk each night. As she returned to her small room in the East Wing, a memory pressed itself into her mind. The night her parents' world was destroyed, she remembered the shattering of wooden doors, boots stomping through the house, a woman screaming for her child, her mother's hands warm, soft pushing her beneath the floorboards, the voice whispering frantically, "Listen to everything. Forget nothing." She never forgot. Not the faces, not the uniforms. Yet, the voice of the man who commanded the raid. She heard him clearly as he shouted, "Burn the place! Leave no trace." His name echoed in her mind every night for years. Captain Thorne. A man whose cruelty was known only in certain circles her parents had been connected to. They were scholars, healers, and quiet rebels who helped escapees find new lives beyond Charleston's reach. Their work was done carefully, secretly, until someone betrayed them. Now that same man, Captain Thorne, was rumored to be doing business with none other than Silas Breedwell, and that was why Camellia had allowed herself to be sold, not to be owned, but to infiltrate and to find the man who had destroyed her family. Asterisk, the Breedwell estate was a treasure trove of information. Silas was meticulous, but not nearly meticulous enough to hide his tracks from someone like Camellia. By day, she appeared calm and obedient, blending into the flow of the household. But her mind was always at work. She noticed which letters Silas burned instead of filing. She learned which keys hung from which hooks. She observed how often his carriage left for the docks and returned at hours, when honest business rarely thrived. There was one place she hadn't yet breached: Silas's private study. She had tried once, but that was the night Silas accused her. She couldn't risk being caught again. She needed a distraction, and one arrived unexpectedly. Asterisk Polly the same. Maid who first asked her name became Camelia's quiet ally without even realizing it. One afternoon, while dusting the library, Polly whispered, "Miss Camellia, I saw something strange last night." Camellia didn't look up from the tea tray she was arranging. "What did you see, Mr. Breedwell?" He was carrying a chest. A heavy one. Took 2 guards to help him. They brought it into the study. Camelia's pulse quickened. "Did you see what was inside?" Polly shook her head. "No, ma'am, but he told the guards never to mention it. Said it was privileged business." Privileged business. That could mean anything in Charleston. But Camellia had a feeling she knew exactly what kind of business. Silas considered too privileged to hide anywhere but his locked study. A ledger. A record of transactions. Shipments. Names. Perhaps even the name she had hunted for years. Her next move became clear. Asterisk that night. Camellia lay awake, staring at the faint outline of the window frame above her. She reached for a memory lesson from her father, who had taught her to read coded messages hidden inside everyday patterns. Block letters disguised as numbers, names disguised as destinations, dates disguised as shipments. If Silas kept a ledger on, she was certain he did. Then it would hold clues she could decode. She needed only one chance to see it, one opportunity. And then she would know whether Captain Thorne remained in Charleston, or if he had moved deeper into the network, hiding behind men like Silas. Either way, she would track him. She had waited years. She could wait a few days more. But when the time came, she would not hesitate. Asterisk, by the end of the week, Charleston buzzed with rumors. Strange ships docking at night. Men exchanging sealed crates behind taverns. And a name that surfaced again and again in hushed tones. Captain Thorne. Camellia heard these whispers as she worked, and every whisper sharpened her resolve. Her parents' last words lived inside her, guiding her. Listen to everything. Forget nothing. Now, the truth, she sought the truth she had crossed cities and suffered indignities to reach, was within arm's reach. All she needed was to open the right door, and soon that door would open, whether Silas Breedwell intended it or not. Night at the Breedwell estate carried a particular kind of silence, the heavy, expectant quiet that settles over a place hiding too many secrets. Most nights the servants slept early, exhausted from their work. The guards stationed outside the front entrance drifted into half-conscious boredom, and Silas Breedwell usually retired to his study with a glass of imported brandy he guarded, more jealously than the truth, but tonight felt different. Even the walls seemed to hold their breath. Camellia sensed it the moment she stepped into the dim corridor of the east wing. She adjusted the candle in her hand, small flame casting shadows that stretched across the polished floorboards like reaching fingers. Tonight, she would finally enter the study. She had spent weeks studying the rhythms of the house. Opening and closing of doors, the creak of stairs, the habits of Silas Breedwell. She knew the exact moment his footsteps softened, signaling he'd sunk into his leather chair, brandy in hand. She knew the faint scratch of his quill when he wrote, "I'm done," and she recognized the particular sound he made after drinking too much. A long exhale, like a man weighed down by the sins he carried. She waited, and when the exhale came, the time had arrived. Asterisk, the front gate groaned open on its rusty hinges. Then came hurried voices, guards, whispering, boots scuffing. A visitor, late-night callers at Breedwell Manor were never casual guests. They were men with secrets and deals, to illicit to conduct in daylight. This was the distraction Camellia needed. Silas cursed quietly, setting down his glass. She heard him march toward the foyer. The study door clicked shut behind him. She counted the seconds. 1, 2, 3, then she moved. Camellia glided down the hallway, slipping into the shadows each time a guard turned his head. Her candle had been extinguished long ago. Light drew attention, and attention was fatal. At the study door, she knelt quickly. Silas had added a second lock after his suspicions. But locks, no matter how intricate, all carried a weakness. Her mother taught her that. A lock is just a question, child. All you need is the right answer. She slid a thin hairpin from her curls. Her fingers moved with quiet precision. Click, click. The door opened. She slipped inside. Asterisk, the air smelled of smoke, ink, and secrets. Camellia climbed behind the heavy mahogany desk, her heartbeat steady. She opened the top drawer, empty. The second, quills and wax seals. The third, count books. Nothing unusual. She reached for the bottom drawer. It was locked, not with a key, but with a small coded mechanism. A puzzle lock, rare, expensive, and unnecessary for anything ordinary. Silas had kept something very important inside. Camellia pressed her ear to the lock. She twisted the dial until she heard the faintest metallic shift. 1, 2, 3. The lock released, the drawer slid open, and there it was, a thick, leather-bound ledger. Not the household records, not the plantation accounts. This ledger was different. Older, heavier, stained at the corners as if it's been carried through storms and over oceans. She opened it. Names, dates, shipments, codes, Charleston, Savannah, New Orleans, and then the name that stole her breath. Thorne. Captain Elias Thorne, listed 3 times. Twice for delivery routes. Once for something much darker. Special transport, confidential. Delivery to Breedwell personally. Her pulse thundered in her ears. What had Thorne delivered to? Silas. And why had Silas kept this ledger hidden, even from his most trusted men? She flipped the page. Anne froze. There, written in Silas's careful hand, were the coordinates. Location. Something hidden outside the city limits. A base. Meeting point. Another secret market. Whatever it was. Silas planned to visit it within the week. Camellia had her first real lead. But she wasn't alone. Asterisk, a floorboard creaked behind her. Camellia whirled around, heart racing, but before she could reach for the candle or the ledger, a figure stepped from the darkness. Polly. The maid's face was pale, her breathing quick. I followed you, she whispered. I knew you were planning something. I needed to know. Camellia stared at her, part fearful, part calculating, part relieved. Why, Polly? She asked softly. Polly wrung her hands. Because I can't keep living like this. And if you're planning something, if you're trying to get free, then I want to help. Camellia exhaled slowly, then closed the ledger. What I'm planning, she said carefully, is dangerous. Polly swallowed. I don't care. For the first time since she arrived at Breedwell Manor, Camellia felt something unexpected, a spark of hope. One ally could change everything. Asterisk before Camellia could answer. Voices echoed down the hallway, Silas returning. Polly gasped, Camellia, extinguished the candle just as footsteps approached. In the dark, she whispered, Stay silent, stay still. Silas's voice drifted through the door. He was only feet away. Camellia clutched the ledger to her chest. Tonight she had uncovered the truth, but keeping that truth hidden might cost her everything. Silas Breedwell stood just outside his study door, muttering curses under his breath. Camellia and Polly pressed themselves deeper into the darkness, backs against a tall bookshelf. The study was barely lit by the dying embers in the fireplace, shadows stretching across the floor like warning signs. If Silas entered the room now, it would be over. Camellia could feel Polly trembling beside her. She reached out and squeezed Polly's hand steady, calm, reassuring as if fear were something she could silence by touch alone. After a tense moment, Silas's footsteps retreated down the hall. The danger for now passed. Camellia exhaled slowly, then tucked the ledger beneath her shawl. She motioned Polly to follow, and together they slipped silently from the study. Closing the door without a sound, tonight had revealed more than secrets. It had revealed opportunity and danger. In the beginning of a revolution neither woman fully understood yet. Asterisk, back in the safety of the East Wing, Polly finally let the breath she'd been holding burst free. Miss Camellia, what is that book? She whispered, eyes wide. Camellia placed the ledger on the small table by the window and opened it once more. The ink shimmered in the moonlight. This, Camellia said, is the proof of what Silas has been hiding. The men he works with, the shipments he protects, the names of those who built Charleston's hidden market. Polly leaned over, reading the entries with growing horror. These are ships, Polly whispered. Routes, deliveries, payments, and not all of them are legal, Camellia added. Some of them are darker, much darker. When Polly reached Captain Thorne's name, her voice dropped to a near whisper. That's him? The man who... the one you've been looking for? Yes, Camellia said quietly. He's connected to Silas, and Silas is meeting him soon. Polly wrapped her arms around herself as if suddenly cold. What do you want to do? Camellia closed the ledger slowly. Exactly what I came here to do. Asterisk, but confronting. Thorne required allies, real allies. Not just Polly, not just servants. She needed people who understood secrecy as deeply as she did, hidden. In the ledger's margins were faint. Symbols markings only someone trained to notice them would recognize. A tiny drawn cross. A looped letter C, short vertical bars. Her father's code. These symbols appeared near certain names and locations, marking them as part of the underground network her parents once supported. A network that, against all odds, seemed to still be alive beneath Charleston's surface. If these symbols were still in use, then somewhere nearby, someone from that network was still active. Camellia traced one location with her finger. St. Mark's Parish. Just outside the city on Old Chapel, frequently listed and coded, its messages as a meeting point. She closed the ledger and turned to Polly. I need to send a message. Polly blinked. To who? 2 people who can help us bring down Silas and Thorne. Polly swallowed. Tell me what to do. Camellia smiled softly. It had been years since she worked with another soul she could trust. She never expected trust to come from a fearful maid with trembling hands. But sometimes, fate chooses unexpected allies. Asterisk, at midnight. Polly left the estate under the guise of taking food scraps to the back gardens. In her pocket, carefully hidden beneath cloth and twine, was a tiny strip of paper folded into itself 7 times, sealed with beeswax. Marked with the same symbols Camellia found in the ledger, it read, The ledger exists. Thorne is coming. I am alive. Polly hurried through the side gate and slipped into the narrow alley behind the estate. The night was humid, thick with the scent of the marsh. But she didn't stop until she reached the old stone wall behind the stables. 3 knocks, pause. 2 knocks, pause. 1 knock. The coded rhythm, hands shaking. Polly placed the tiny message into a crack in the wall, just as Camellia had instructed. Then she ran back to the manor. She didn't see the figure who slipped from behind the trees minutes later, or the hand that retrieved the message from the wall, or the silent nod of understanding. Camelia's signal had been received. At sunrise. Silas Breedwell's mood was foul. A shipment had gone missing. A messenger had been found beaten behind the docks. And someone clever, had been asking questions. About Captain Thorne, Silas slammed his fist on the table. Find out who in this household is meddling where they shouldn't. The guards nodded grimly. Camellia from across the room. Kept her expression serene, but inside, she felt a shift. Silas was growing desperate, and desperate men made dangerous mistakes. Tonight's message had reached the rebels. The ledger was in her possession. Polly had proven braver than she knew. The pieces were moving, and now the storm she'd been preparing for her entire life was finally beginning to rise. The sun had barely risen when the first sign appeared. A simple symbol etched in chalk on the outer wall of the Breedwell estate's mall, almost invisible to a normal eye. But Camellia saw it the moment she stepped outside to fetch water. She froze, heart racing with recognition. A circle intersected by a single lined her father's mark. The message was clear. We heard you. We're coming. For the first time since she'd arrived in Charleston, Camellia felt the weight of her loneliness lift. She wasn't fighting alone anymore, and that changed everything. Inside the manor. Chaos simmered beneath polished surfaces. Silas Breedwell paced the halls with a fury that frightened even the guards. Someone in this house is working against me, he roared. Someone has been in my study. His eyes scanned the servants, darting with suspicion. Polly kept her gaze down. Camellia remained perfectly still, perfectly calm. That only angered Silas more. You, he snapped at Camellia. Why do you look so unbothered? You think I don't notice the way you move? The way you watch? Camellia met his eyes with the same collected composure she had shown the night of the auction. I watch because watching is safer than looking away. Words hit him like a slap before Silas could speak again. A breathless guard rushed in from the courtyard. Surther's movement near the property line. People gathering. How many? Silas demanded. Too many. He recognized the signs. Someone was coming for him and not through the front door. He stormed toward his study. Camellia followed silently. Polly close behind. This was it. The moment she had been preparing for since childhood. Silas flung open his study door. The ledger was gone. He stared at the empty drawer, disbelief turning to rage. Who took it? He shouted. Who touched this drawer? Silas turned toward Camellia, the suspicion in his eyes solidifying into certainty. It was you. Camellia didn't deny it. Instead, she reached into her shawl and placed the ledger on the desk between them. She had already made her copies. The rebellion already had what it needed. She was not afraid to return the original. Silas stared at her in stunned anger. You think this will save you? No, Camellia said quietly. It will save others. Silas lunged toward her butt before he reached her. The manor doors burst open. Shouts filled the air. Boots thundered through the halls. The hidden abolitionist, network those her parents once worked with, had arrived. Polly gasped. Stepping behind Camellia, Silas turned pale as the rebels filled the study. Their leader, a tall man with eyes hardened by years of injustice, stepped forward. Silas Breedwell, he said. Your trade ends today, Silas stammered. You have no proof. Camellia placed her hand on the ledger. He kept it himself. Silas paled. The leader nodded. Then it's over. Guards were disarmed. Servants guided outside. No blood spilled. Camellia had insisted this was a liberation, not revenge. Yet Camellia stood frozen, eyes scanning the faces of the rebels, searching, and then she saw him. An older man, hair streaked with gray, but unmistakable Captain Thorne. He had been taken with the others, captured by the rebellion that had finally risen. Camellia stepped toward him, her voice quiet, almost gentle. "Do you remember me?" Thorne blinked, confused. Then recognition slowly spread across his face. "You, the child from the raid? My parents?" Camellia asked. Thorne swallowed. "They died, but not before they told us one thing." Camelia's breath caught. "They said," Thorne whispered, "tell her. To finish what we started." She closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she let herself feel the weight of their memory, not as a burden, but as a legacy. Asterisk, by dusk, the Breedwell estate was empty. Silas had been taken for trial. Thorne would answer for his crimes. The hidden market had fallen, and Camellia stood on the pier, the salty wind blowing through her long curls. Polly ran to her, eyes shining with gratitude. "Are you leaving?" she asked. Camellia smiled softly. "There is more work to be done. Will I see you again?" Camellia placed a hand on Polly's cheek. "You already have everything you need to be brave," she said. "That means I'm always with you." Polly nodded, wiping tears. The rebels waited aboard a small ship ready to sail to their next mission. Their next liberation. Camellia walked toward them, not as property, not as prey, not as a victim of Charleston's secret markets, but as a woman who had reclaimed her destiny, a woman whose name would be whispered for generations, not claimed, her true name spoken only once, softly into the evening air, the name her mother gave her, Asha. And with that, she stepped onto the ship and into legend.